Pisces? March. We think.
Yeah, we think because Mercury, the planet of thinking, is a little confused these days.
Well, Mercury is a little confused, and we'll get into that a bit more in a moment, as soon as we figure it out. But all the planets are a bit confused. We have a heavy dose of... I just got a lot of reverb, did I not? We have a heavy dose of Pisces energy, which until the middle end of the month is really the theme, I think, of what's going on.
Yeah, every month we know the sun starts in a sign, and somewhere around the 20th to the 23rd of the month, the sun changes signs, and those really give us the core themes for the month. But we begin March with the sun and a passel of planets in Pisces. And I'd like to say, you know, while we joke about Pisces being confused and diffuse and unclear, understand that the... All right, let's start all over. I want to start all over. Okay, it's Mercury retrograde. We can do what we want.
You want to start over again?
Yeah, we are. Okay. This month, March, begins with a whole load of planets in Pisces.
It does, and Mercury on top of that is retrograde, which often means that things that you thought were done are not and need to be repeated.
Right, and not only do we have Mercury retrograde moving backwards, the planet of intellect or information, sort of slipping around in the sign of the fishes, but we have the sun in Pisces in the beginning of the month. We have Venus, the planet of love, in Pisces, Mars, the planet of action. There's a great deal of energy in the last sign of the zodiac. But while Pisces has a reputation for being fuzzy and illogical, the point is not to create confusion, it's to open us up to another kind of intelligence. And the intelligence of Pisces is the intuitive sense or feelings that inform us every bit as well as intellect does.
Well, right, and there are many types of intelligence. Verbal or logical intelligence is one type. Emotional intelligence is another. And with so many planets in Pisces, the emotional intelligence is what's brought to the surface, but it's not even an emotional intelligence that can be languaged. And here's where the paradox occurs, because Mercury is the planet of language. Mercury is the planet of interchange of information through ideas and words. And Mercury has been in Pisces for a while and stays in Pisces for a while, because 3 times a year Mercury turns retrograde, which means that it covers old ground, which is what it's doing now in Pisces, where it doesn't know which way it's really going.
Exactly. Traditional astrology is filled with ideas about what planets belong in what signs. And Mercury does not belong in Pisces, at least according to astrological tradition, because Mercury is logical and data-oriented, and Pisces, the sign of feeling, is the antithesis of data. However, when planets are in places where the ancients thought they didn't belong, it doesn't mean necessarily that things are bad. It usually means things are more complex, and at the higher end of the equation, there's the possibility of embracing more. It's sort of like going to a country where you don't speak the language. You may have a great deal, you will have a great deal of difficulty understanding ordinary conversations. But because your intelligence is taken off of its usual track, you may become aware of many other things that you wouldn't notice in your own nation.
Right, and I think what's interesting here is not only is Mercury retrograde in Pisces, and as Jeff said, the sun is in Pisces because it is every time this year, but Mercury and Venus often track close to the sun, and Mars tracks close to the sun every other year. And right now, the 3 personal planets, Mercury, how we think or how we talk or how we communicate, Venus, what we like, and Mars, how we go after what we like, are all clustered close to the sun in Pisces, making this an especially Piscean pre-spring.
Yeah, and I want to come back to the idea Rick brought up earlier about emotional intelligence. Pisces is a water sign, and the water signs Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces are the signs that have to do with emotion and feeling, which is why Rick brought up this idea. Yet, an interesting thing about Pisces is that as the last sign of the zodiac, it is the least personal of the water signs. So the emotional intelligence that's available to us now is not so much about unraveling our individual and unique stories. It is about understanding collective principles of feelings. With the moon in Pisces, we can be lost.
With the sun in Pisces.
I'm sorry, thank you, Rick. With the sun in Pisces, we may be lost at sea, but we can feel currents that we wouldn't otherwise be aware of. And I think one of the most important things of Pisces is compassion. That idea of being able to recognize something beyond our need to hold ourselves or to hold other people accountable. Now, on one hand, that can look sloppy and loose, but on the other hand, this is a time of year when it is appropriate to let go.
Yeah, and in some ways, you know, the Pisces metaphor is really about the dissolution of individuality. That's what compassion is. Compassion basically says someone else that's hurting hurts me. When I have compassion, my feelings are empathic or sympathic. Sympathy and empathy are both heightened in Pisces because there's a resonance that I have with what's out there. And what's really interesting is that spaced out, dreamy, imaginative, confusing side of Pisces. Remember, Pisces is the sign that does involve all those aspects. And they're all about the dissolution of the boundaries between me and other people. And although the ego needs those boundaries to survive, the spirit, and here we come to the spiritual side of Pisces, that is heightened with so many planets in Pisces.
Yeah, absolutely. Dissolution is a Piscean theme. And that's, I mean, we're popeless at the moment. I don't know how you guys are getting along. Do you realize we have no pope? So where are you finding your guidance?
Does that mean we're popeless?
We are, yes, I said we are popeless, absolutely, at this time. There is a dissolution at the head of the Vatican. And what the hell is a sequester? There's something else that nobody seems to be able to do anything about or to completely understand, and the authority and the responsibility and the accountability are not there. So both here in the US on a national level with respect to economics and globally for about, you know, the billion or so Catholics on Earth, we're rudderless and in many ways leaderless.
Right, which are both really Piscean issues, and hopelessness somehow goes with hopelessness.
Or hopefulness, depending upon.
And that's the thing is that the idea of having someone at the rudder or controlling the ship is really another illusion. And I think that part of taking that illusion away gives us the opportunity, as planets move later in the month and on through the spring into Aries, it gives us the opportunity, the recoil is to take responsibility for ourselves.
Yeah, well said. And this is also part of not only a larger pattern, but the most significant astrological pattern, one that Rick and I have been talking about for a couple of years, and that's the ongoing squares or challenging right angles between powerful Pluto in authoritative Capricorn and revolutionary Uranus in independent Aries. There is a collective, longer range breakdown of structures and institutions. And, you know, we can either feel helpless in our lives, particularly now with all of these planets in Pisces and thrash about in the waters of our lives trying to find a ground, or let go and float. The secret of Pisces is that when we stop fighting the currents, fighting the tides, the right ones will find us.
And there's that wonderful Hopi prophecy that's been going around now for a few years that really is if you Google Hopi Prophecy, you will find this image of these are times when the river is flowing fast. Do not try to hold on to what you have. Push off, away from the shore, and float. That is the key to survival. That's what that prophecy basically says. And it's really, that's what you're just saying, with all these planets in Pisces, this is an opportunity to let go of those things that we thought were giving us security and safety, and to rudderlessly go with the proverbial flow.
And I can certainly understand in my own life and in others' lives how difficult that is. If, you know, the critical issue, whether it's health or job and money or relationship or family, whatever it is, we're all sort of have an ingrained need to sort of address the issues in our lives rather than passively trusting that they're going to work themselves out. Yet, with all of this Pisces mushiness in the air, with the overlapping discussions at both ends of the room and the lack of sonic clarity that I'm experiencing at the moment, we have two planetary bodyguards that are probably keeping us from going off the rails.
And are you referring to Saturn and Pluto?
Absolutely. These are the two toughest planets in astrology. Saturn was called the greater malefic, the big bad guy. Chronos, father time, limits, mortality, the wall hitting the boundary.
Until he met the real bad guy.
Pluto, that's right. Pluto, the mythological lord of the underworld, discovered in the depths of the Great Depression in the early days of rising fascism in Europe and in Japan. Pluto is harmoniously aligned with Saturn on and off this year, but right on the 8th of this month. And what that's like is having the lifeguards who are sort of making sure that even if you drift out to sea a little bit too far, that there is a sort of an invisible kind of protection, an early warning signal or a sense of guidance that's operant even when we think or feel like we're lost.
And we'll,
Saturn and Pluto.
Saturn and
Yes,
Pluto.
that's what we said.
Saturn in Scorpio, Pluto in Capricorn. This is a slow-moving aspect that was exact for the first time last December, is again now exact this week in March, and will be exact a third and final time late summer, early fall. And what's interesting is all these planets that are moving through Pisces. You see, Saturn is in watery Scorpio, which means that all these planets moving through Pisces, one by one as they come through the early mid-degrees of Pisces, are forming harmonious sextiles with Pluto and harmonious trines with Saturn, as Saturn and Pluto themselves are getting along. So what happens is that the taskmaster, the final judgment day of Saturn saying, this is the end, you know, it's the final exam, if you will, is actually taking us to a place that has long-lasting potential with real power for deep transformative change. And these apparently spaced out planets in Pisces that are pulling symbolism and information off the internet rather than the internet, they are working really soundly and solidly with Saturn and Pluto to give us something of lasting use, lasting value.